welcome everybody. This is the CX studio here. So Rebecca and I work for part of Capgemini called DCX, which is Digital Customer Experience. That's where the Salesforce practice sits, and another couple of other bits of tech as well. But as we've seen, there's a lot of crossover between, MuleSoft, SAP, data. So yeah, we're really happy to host you, and we have like whiteboards and stuff here, so it's all one of those very funky working spaces, and there's more of that down there. We might be using the whiteboards a little bit later on in the presentation, so if you fancy scribbling, you're in the right place. So I'm Matthew Morris. When I'm not a user group leader, I'm Salesforce Innovation Director at Capgemini. I'm not going to tell the joke. Rebecca's heard it too many times. Okay, I can't do it. Okay,
go on.
I'm the Salesforce Innovation Director at Capgemini. I gave myself that title. That's how innovative I am. See? I know, but when you hear it the second or third time, you're going to be like... Anyway, I've just been trying that one out recently. So that's me, Rebecca.
Yeah, hi everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. So I've been with Capgemini for about just over a year. And unlike Matt, I don't align specifically to Salesforce. I kind of work across all of the different partners that we have at Cap. But my focus, my history, my career has all been around how we use data to enhance customer experiences in data strategy, analytics, and now platform. So the new product from Salesforce around Data Cloud kind of felt right in the middle of my wheelhouse in terms of how we can actually use it to generate better experiences for our clients.
So I think Rebecca and I first met probably the end of last year, beginning of this. And Rebecca's the lead on the data-driven CX proposition that we have. So that's not a technology-specific thing. It's just really how we talk to different clients about, okay, how do you do data-driven to create customer experiences? Clues in the name. So Rebecca came with, some existing example architectures around data-driven, which included things like Adobe, things like Telium, which is a CDP, so a little bit like Salesforce CDP, and said, if we were to do this for Salesforce, how would that go? And this was just after Salesforce had announced Genie, but hadn't told us any details about it, like they always do. So what we did within the practice, we've got a lot of marketing cloud experts that already were familiar with CDP. But we've also got lots of other Salesforce-y type people, a bit like many of the people here. We've got developers, we've got consultants, we've got architects, we've got everything. So we sat down and we said, right, well, how would we explain this to our business colleagues, right? So we've also got some consultants that are experts in things like retail and things like automotive and things like utilities. Well, we're pretty strong in utilities. We work at most of the major water companies, most of the water companies in the country. A lot of the electricity retailers, National Grid, all lots of people like that. So we know utilities. We've got lots of people who know utilities. So we went to talk to them and we said, we want to talk about data. Would your clients like to hear about that? They're like, not really. It's not relevant to them. How can you make it relevant to them? Well, okay, if you could do whatever you wanted to do, never mind about Salesforce being a bit clunky at times when it comes to large amounts of data, what could we do? That's where this story sort of starts. So we picked utilities as an example. Well,
they went a bit quiet
no.
for a while.
So we took utilities as an example, and we said, well, what is it that utilities companies need? And by the way, the thing about utilities companies is they're a regulated industry. If they don't have happy customers, they get fined, right? So they're all getting quite heavily fined at the moment because there's lots of unhappy customers. So creating great customer experiences, even in difficult times. So we see challenges around the water industry. There's challenges around energy prices. So all of this stuff is really pertinent right now. If you can create a great experience, even in the midst of difficult circumstances, maybe that person will still be happy with the experience they received, right? So there's kind of the business case there. So they also are looking to expand, so not just sell the energy retail things, they also want to have supplementary products. So that could be value-added services. So if you're a developer, if you're like a self-builder, or if you're a large-scale property developer, you want to get supply in, you want to have these things done in a smooth manner. Lots of engagement around that. So that's why we chose utilities. There's lots of text there that I'm not going to read because it's really boring. But Rebecca had a great suggestion earlier.
I think, well, before we get to that, I think one of the most interesting things in utilities is the journey they've been on in the last 5 to 10 years, in that of old, you would have received a bill, had very little kind of emotional relationship with these vendors, and you'd have had a very transactional based, you bill, your payment, you ring up and you complain because it's way higher than you thought it was going to be in most instances. And there was no real need to do more than that. And I think in the world now, where through the digital revolution, through having different apps, you've got the introduction of smart meters, there's more data than ever. We're going into a cost of living crisis. People want insight. Help me understand how I can better save, how I can make sure that my bill is manageable every month. Give me the tools I need as a customer to make sure that I can manage my utilities, whether that's gas, electric, water, so that I get to a place where when my bill comes, I'm expecting it, I know what it's going to be, and I've actually helped manage it along the way.
So the panel's pushing back into the...
Exactly, all of the electric movement that's come through. So utilities companies can't rest anymore on that transactional relationship, because the customer in so many other industries has started to get more hands-on with the data, the insights, and building a two-way dialogue. And they need to catch up really in terms of that experience. So that was kind of the ethos of putting the customer and the data at the heart of their operation. But before we dive into the kind of what does that mean and what does that look like, I thought it'd be quite a nice place to start in just kind of to the room, thinking about the bad experiences that we've all encountered from brands. I'm sure we have a long list. I had one recently where I'd booked a flight to Naples. I'd been browsing for a few days and looking at different travel agencies, and finally found a flight I thought was perfect, ended up booking it, got on with my life. The next day, I got an email saying, your flight is still in your basket, you need to convert, and I freaked out that I'd not booked and the price had gone up and all of this kind of stuff. Anyway, it realised I had booked, but the marketing system that had sent me the notification to try and get me to go back to my basket and complete hadn't been informed that so there was a complete disconnect, and it ended up me stressing out that I'd not booked the flights that I needed to book and the price had gone up. So that was a really bad experience for me, that I could have been like, let me get inside your organisation and just put data at the heart of what you're doing, and you could be more informed. So I just wanted to see if you had any, like, I've had a terrible experience yesterday with customer call centres or retail or commerce, or just bad brands, bad experiences.
I'm going to ask quickly to prelude is, were you targeting the big energy companies on this? Because the smaller disruptors that have come in over the last few years they've got apps and they've got smart meters and they're much more data driven.
Well, they've put pressure on the big players, right? So the big players are where we're positioning this, and one of the arguments is because of that new wave of, Hive and all of these kind of competitors coming in, if they don't keep up, they're going to get left behind because everyone's moving over to these newer players. Absolutely.
And following straight on from that, my bad experience was one of those disruptors that went under and jacked my prices up 40% in about space of 6 months, and presumably were looking at customer data more than their financials. They weren't hedging on the futures markets effectively, and folded. And my electricity got cut off for 2 days while they were handing over to, I think it went to Octopus or something.
Oh my gosh.
It wasn't particularly seamless.
Was it Bulb?
Bulb, yeah.
I've had 8 months trying to get smart meters installed and had quite big battles. I'm still going to go to the Ombudsman. Then they still spent 3 months trying to, the one gas meter just died completely. The battery is supposed to last 10 years, even that was 3 months. And I said to them, look, each time I had to, a new appointment would take 3 or 4 weeks. So when I knew that the gas meter had died, which happened to be just about the coldest time of the year, I just said, okay, turn around, you have to inform me within, in 4 weeks' time of when you actually want to attend.
Flip it back on them.
And I said, and I don't expect to have any estimated bills or anything else. They did try it on, but I pointed out to them, I said, you said, you didn't contradict my statement to say no estimated bills, and they tried it, and I said, no.
If they can't meter it, they can't bill you, right?
Well, they tried to estimate.
Bad experience, right? You don't look at that brand favourably. You start thinking about where else can I go.
Thames Water's also a good one because they keep on digging up our road. And the council don't know. We phone up the council. who's digging up our road? The council don't know. Phone around, find out it's Thames Water, and they don't even know that it's actually them digging up the road.
Yeah.
We actually go and talk to the workmen and say, who's digging up our road?
And that end-to-end as well across different parties is another challenge that we see a lot, and that's true as well with EVs and solar in terms of getting the connection.
The fragmented industry,
Making sure those connection points of the data journey actually all sync through the relevant parts of the business. Right?
That's right, because you as the customer, you don't know whose fault it is. You're talking to a retailer. And it's your view that you have of them, isn't it? So it's in their interest to try and solve this problem.
And like you said earlier, like it's in their interest to keep up, because we as consumers and users, we got used to a certain standards, and they are still behind on that. So
You've got more choice than ever now.
But more than ever, right? So right now, when you think about the old world, you could argue you were loyal, you stayed with this provider, but you didn't have 5 digital screens around you showing you what else is out there. Now, 85% of customers that have a bad experience will move. They will look to another provider. Brands can't afford to have bad experiences and risk that, because customers are becoming more fickle. Like loyalty is a question. It's like, how many brands are you really, really loyal with, to the point where if you have a bad experience, you ride it out, you see it through, If I have a bad experience with one brand, if I have a terrible customer service call, or I will just say, never again, there's so much more choice, I'm going to go elsewhere.
Unless you haven't got a choice like the Thames Water.
If you haven't got a choice and you're stuck, then yes, it's a slightly different situation. But to Matt's point, their satisfaction of their customers, they get fined if the customers aren't happy. So it has an impact on them at the bottom line as well.
UK Power Networks, very good.
My dad used to be their head accountant.
So because CX is so important, because brands know how important it is, because of new players coming in that are challenging the way that things have been done, there has been a huge emphasis on how can we understand our customer, what they need, who they are, and serve them the best way possible. Get rid of disparate systems all over the place with fragmented data sets. How can we consolidate, bring it all together, and once you brought it together, create a rich, centralized view of who your customers are and what they want, and then you can action things off the back of that. So you're ringing customer service. How many times have you waited for 45 minutes trying to get through to somebody and then the call just cuts off?
always.
We've all been there. It is the worst experience possible.
So Rebecca, you sound like you really know this.
I'm
Wouldn't it be great if there was a framework
Oh, wouldn't it be?
that kind of
Wouldn't it be?
described what you just talked about?
It
So would it be something like this?
Well, as a matter of fact, yes, Matt, that's exactly the framework that we've put together.
Before you take us through it, just to say this this predates Salesforce Data Cloud, but here's a spoiler: it fits exactly with what we need to help, adopt Data Cloud.
Yeah.
So
what we've dealt with a lot of clients over the last few years is we deal with a lot of CTOs, we deal with a lot of CIOs, and they want to get straight into the detail, right? They want to go straight to what platforms do we have, what infrastructure do we have to deliver this, and that's really the bottom up. What we try and do is really work from the top down. What is the business actually trying to achieve? What are those experiences that you want to enable? What are the pain points in your organization that is currently causing distress for customers on a day-to-day basis? How do we then make sure that those requirements from the top down of the business get fed into functional and technical deliverables so that we can build towards that? So it's really important. We talk most of the time here. Sometimes you're going to get dragged into the bottom up and the technology, that's fair, but we always try and sync it back to the top. But the process that we go through in DDCX is data-driven customer experience. That's the offer that I lead across Europe. So what we try and do is we start on the left-hand side. What are the data sources that currently exist in your environment? We're focusing here primarily on customer data sets, but it's not to say that we can't look at operational data sets as well. For example, they have a lot of operational data sets around how security is managed, whether the flights are on time, all of that kind of stuff. So just understanding the landscape of what data is available. Once you've understood what data is available and where it sits, you can then start to do some data strategy around, do we have any gaps? Is there anything that we're currently missing? Do we need to partner with a third-party external provider to bring that data set in? Are we currently tagging all of our content in the right way to make sure that we get that behavioral data, which is so important? So as you're browsing websites and apps, I can understand what you're interested in and what you're trying to do. That first-party strategy, that move towards first-party data is becoming more and more important, especially with the deprecation of third-party cookies around the corner and so on. So understanding the data landscape is the first step. Then we really want to get into a consolidation phase. How do we actually start to then bring these data sets together? Because the insights, the intelligence comes when you start stitching multiple data sets together and you can start to understand more about the customer, and that picture starts to become more of a 360 view. We live in a world where we have multiple devices. I might have 6 different interactions with the brand. I might log in as Rebecca Rusby on my personal account on one day. I might use my mobile app and browse as an unknown user. Next time I might log in via my work address and so on. There are so many different identities that exist within an environment of different data sources. This step is all about how do we consolidate that to a single identifier. It's called identity resolution. So a lot of platforms are talking about identity resolution being an out-of-the-box capability these days, and it uses a number of different algorithms and models to try and stitch everything we know about you and your names, your last names, even predictive variables that say that you live in the same place, so therefore we assume that you're kind of the same person. Once we've got all of your data sets, we understand the wealth of data that we've got available, we start bringing it together, we resolve it around the single identity, we then move into the translate phase. We then start to apply that layer of analytics, machine learning, AI, all of that kind of smart intelligence that's going to give the customer insight on, actually, based on everything we know about you, you're a really high value customer, you always buy the same products, you're likely to actually move into this product if we give it the right level of offer, the right incentive. And based on all of that knowledge and that predictive power, we can then start to orchestrate the right journeys. Now, this isn't a marketing-only effort. This can be, how do we inform the customer service agents, actually, that they've had somebody that's tried to leave 5 times in the last 2 months, and if you want to keep them, then this is the thing you need to talk to them about to keep them. This is what's going to get them to stay. That insight doesn't currently exist because that data isn't consolidated to understand the user effectively enough to help that customer service agent on that call at that right time. It does include marketing, so personalization of content, making sure that we're targeting the right offers, the right promotions. Do I actually want to invest a full promotion in you if you've got high likelihood of churn, you've not got that much predictive future value to us as an organisation? Is it worth actually giving you a £5 discount? Or am I actually better placed that £5 discount to somebody that's more likely to stay, more likely to grow into something else bigger in the future? So you can help navigate all of these different teams to make better informed decisions. And then it actually starts to go send out all of that intelligence across marketing, commerce, sales, and service to make sure that the experiences are as tailored and personalized as possible across channels. That then ultimately, because all of those experiences are out in the real world, creates a feedback loop. We can then learn from those experiences, we can collect more data, and we can fine-tune the model. And it's constantly a 360 of bringing data together, learning about it, analytics, feeding that back out to multiple different channels, learning, optimizing, and moving forward. We then say, well, if you want to do all of this, let's have a conversation about the platforms and the solution architecture that you've got in place and whether you've got any gaps in capabilities or technology to enable you to do this. There may be, if they're going on a journey of transformation, a huge operating model requirement. There may be change management. They might not have the right people in their organisation to do this. So all of that bottom up is helping them make sure that they're set up for success in the long term. But let's crawl, walk, run before we start tripping over. Let's try and take them on a journey of development. So that's the framework.
Fantastic.
The underpinning is your service catalog, is it? So you're talking about platform enablement.
Yes. So in order to do these types of things, what do you need from data, people, capabilities, platforms? It might be a team of data scientists. It might be, all of the enablers that are going to make that above possible.
So it's agnostic at this stage. Everything is agnostic.
Yes.
And how adaptable this framework is compared to B2B to B2C?
So it's you can take the same B2B application. There's a slide that I've not got in here, which is essentially a triangle. You've got the brand at one side, you've got the consumer, and you've got the customer. So for example, they're the brand, the consumer is you and I that shop at Salesforce. The customer is all of their FMCG brands that sit on the shelf. This framework can be applied in the B2B side of the triangle. It can be applied in the B2B because they need to be able to collect data to have better conversations with their customers. They need to do account-based marketing. They need to be able to set the price at the right point to their customers. So it works in any aspect of a B2B, B2C, C2C, very complex, different instances of that now, but it can be applied in most instances.
Predicting surges in demand so that you need to order from your suppliers.
Exactly. Order-based fulfillment. So if your stock levels are starting to go down, how can we use that data to intelligently order a new amount of certain based on your previous order quantities? We can predict the likelihood of you needing to order again based on the use cases are endless for the framework.
So you are embedding the core supply chain data back into CRM to do all those predictions.
So not necessarily into CRM. It is a data. We'll come onto the platform in a little bit, but you could easily have, like I said, the operational, the supply chain, and the customer data all coming together to inform. You would just have different instances, an instance for B2B and an instance for B2C.
Sure. Thank you.
Presumably this is one of those models where it's all shades of grey.
Yes.
In the sense of there isn't a perfect
Yes.
answer, and there's nobody who's like completely at 0% on this. You
Yeah.
can apply it to
Yeah.
everybody. But have you got examples of current best practice using this in terms of who you would suggest in terms of the utilities that you're talking about? You know, who would you say would be a leading light in seeing the world through this lens?
That's a very good question. We're about to embark on the utilities journey, so I don't think anyone's there yet. Maybe some of the newer players, the digital first, data first kind of movers. But some of the older guys, and you're right, no one's starting from zero, right? They already have data stores. They already have probably a level of reporting, level of analytics. Is it being used to the best that it can be used? Probably not.
Presumably you could have the instance that companies fail, even if they are very, very good at this, because there's all sorts of business impact on the companies. You know, other factors like financing that could completely screw you.
Yep.
That this doesn't talk about financing as such, and if the government put in a regulatory cap,
But wouldn't you then go back into the loop and learn from it?
One of your data points there, one of your important data points there was predictive financial modelling, and you were feeding
Yes.
futures markets in there.
But the IT people can't do anything about that.
So, and this is really where, there's two things really that come out of this framework, which is, first of all, it's a framework for organisational alignment, really. Yeah. Because if there's people doing things successfully, it's likely that they sort of started as a skunk works project somewhere and they managed to grow it out a little bit. In terms of data maturity, I've not seen any organisations in my career, and especially recently, that I would consider mature. Right? They're still operating in silos. Well, how can you have a view across the business if you're still operating in silos? If your data's in silos? So this is why it's such an exciting time, because data. Oh yeah, if we knew the data, we'd be able to do everything, right? I think everybody appreciates that. We've all been in the internet age long enough, but who's actually executing on it? Well, let's say not everybody. And what are the problems? Is it technology? There's lots of technology, isn't there?
Technology is not the problem.
Yeah, it tends out to be people problem. And having a framework that you can gather people around, whether they be IT, whether they be from different parts of the business, whether they be related around finance, having people come and say, look, this is the vision, can we all agree on something that you can take away from this, then you're in a position to move forward. So this isn't to plug it in, turn it on. This is really taking them on that journey, which will never end, right? We're always going to that point on the horizon.
It's like Scrum methodology for businesses.
All businesses are agile. All businesses would like to think they're agile. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You are absolutely right, of course. And I think if you can try and create a data feed and you understand that kind of external landscape and you have some predictive algorithms and forecasting to try and get on top of that so that you can make a more informed, if somebody's going to leave you on price, then what's the value exchange that you can apply to kind of keep them for other reasons other than price, if price is taken away from you as a variable. So it's just trying to get ahead of it, be proactive. But absolutely, this is a customer-centric, data-centric approach. If an organization works in product verticals, they're never going to talk to the customer in a centralized way. Let's take an example.
Oops.
They own lots of different brands. If each brand is trying to shout to the customer because they've got their own targets, they want to talk to the customer, they want to engage with the customer, and they're all kind of shouting over each other because the customer's not getting the best experience, they need to have a customer central approach, and then the right brand goes to the customer because we know that that's relevant to you. Not everyone's trying to shout. It's the same thing when there's silos of departments. Marketing is siloed. They want to get voice to the customer, they want to talk to the customer, but they're talking to somebody completely differently, to the sales team, to the service team, to all the different teams in the organisation. So everyone's shouting at the customer's getting a completely complicated, convoluted, disparate message, and therefore there isn't that consistency. We're not getting the right message to the right customer at the right time. It doesn't matter how good they are at this, if they're not fixing that fundamental operating model, they're only ever going to go so far. So it all has to come together, and that's why the top-down is so important, because once they've aligned on the top-down vision for the business, the rest should follow.
Next slide.
Sure.
Cool.
We don't have to dwell on this one. This is just...
But I got all excited.
So it's all the text. That's the first time I've got a woo from this
So
slide, honestly.
Take us through the different party data, because I'll put my hand up and say, beginning of the year, I'd heard of some of these. I didn't really know what the difference between them was.
Yeah, sure.
And then there's also one that's relatively new as well, right?
Yes, exactly. So there are lots of different data sets out there, but they're broadly categorized into 4 buckets. The first is zero-party data. This is a relatively new term. I won't be surprised if you've not heard about it. Zero-party came about because first-party just didn't quite cut it. Zero-party is when the user, the customer, declares something to the business. My name is. I want to hear more about this. I'm filling out a form. I'm telling you how I feel. Anything that comes from me and it goes to the organization is zero-party. It's coming directly from the customer, which is incredibly valuable to an organization, to hear directly from that individual how they think, how they feel, who they are, what they want. It's the most accurate of data sources, you could say. You could argue some people say one thing and do another, but that's the joy of first-party data.
That's AI. We'll get onto that next slide.
That's another conversation. First-party data is everything that is collected by the business from their customers. So the customer hasn't told you anything, but they have shopped with you, transactional data. They've purchased something from you. They've browsed your website. They've engaged with your app. They've called your customer service. So as an organization, it's all the products that you own, and the customer is engaging with it. They've not told you anything, but they are doing something that you can collect, either behaviorally or transactionally. You can collect information about what they are doing. I'm browsing premium handbags, argument's sake, 5 times a week, and I've not yet purchased. I've not told you anything, but I'm engaging, and you can probably infer quite a lot from that engagement. I've also bought from, back to that example, every week for the last 3 years, and I always buy gluten-free, vegetarian options, and I typically spend £50 to £60 per basket. It's probably gone up to nearly 100 now, but £50 to £60 per transaction. So you're building this wealth of history around how the customer engages, transacts, and behaves with your products. Map that to what the zero-party data set is doing. They're telling you one thing, the first party, they're doing the other. They might match, they might synergize, they might be completely different. That's where the world of insight gets really exciting.
There's a big pharmacy chain in the States that started marketing pregnancy supplements to women before they even knew they were pregnant, because they'd seen a change in their
behavior,
purchasing habits.
Wow.
Tested that as well.
Did they?
Yeah, you can get into a lot of trouble with that. There's a lot of sensitive categories.
Absolutely, but they built up
Yeah.
a picture and
But that's exactly a great example of behavioural data, right? Yeah. I used to work across I keep pointing there because that's their office over there. I used to work in sensitive categories. Baby was one. And even if I was buying nappies, the number of hoops you had to jump through to make sure that you could target that individual with nappies was ridiculous.
Yeah.
They needed to have bought a certain amount for a certain period of time, and the opt-ins and consents around everything is obviously very important. So, but it is great in non-sensitive categories. If you're browsing and you're interested in stuff and you're buying, the wealth of data that could offer, if I'm trying to cancel my subscription but I haven't quite done it and I end up ringing customer service, if they know that I've just been trying to do that, I'm going to be routed to the right person as quickly as possible to get me to sort out what I'm trying to do. So first-party data and the first-party movement is brands are trying to collect more of it. They want to harness the power of it. And a lot of organizations haven't really thought much about first-party data until now, because customer experience is so important. Second party.
Got in trouble with they sent the baby packs, didn't they, to the addresses, and of course, and basically some of the girls who are pregnant haven't told their families.
Yeah, you've got the same with miscarriages, and you're targeting individuals with babies and products, and they've just had a miscarriage. It's a very sensitive category. It has to be dealt with. Same with pets, actually, to some extent. Pet care and all of that. Less so, but yeah, I have a dog, so very sensitive for me. Second party is when a company has engaged in a partnership with another company and they have decided to share data. Now, there is a lot since GDPR of regulations around this. It can be done, but you can't pass any personally identifiable or sensitive information across. But, for example, a good example, back to the airport, they don't own the airlines. They use a separate business. And they park their planes, they fly through. They have a partnership agreement in place where the airlines know their scheduling of their own planes. They share that data with you. So when you go through here, put up on the board, these are the flight times, they're delayed, they're going to leave. That's coming from the airline's database, not from So the partnership that needs to be in place for that data to be shared to give you the experience that you expect, you don't think twice about it as a customer, but that's second party. That's the sharing of data between two different parties.
So if I use data source like Kantar or Nielsen, so that affiliate part comes into...
That's third. That's third. So second is when two partners agree to share back and forth information. Want to understand how consumers are behaving in a nationally representative sample across the country, they would go to a Nielsen, a Kantar, and understand kind of broad-reaching trends of behaviour. So, for example, everyone's buying Elf Bar vapes. They probably need to stock that, for example. Or they're buying a particular flavour of Tango is exploding in the market generally. They can buy that data, so that's third party, is you're buying that data from an external provider so that they can improve their business ranging, product promotions and so on. Does that make sense? Yeah? So when we look at that left-hand side of the framework and we talk about the different data sets that are available, each one has different complexities in where it's stored, how frequently you can get it, what level of complexity sits behind the data set. In zero and first party, you're going to have a customer identifier, you're going to have PII, you're going to have all of this data. In third party, it's aggregated, there's no individual level of data. So understanding not only what's there, but what you can then do with it is also really, really important, because there's no point bringing data in and paying for loads of it if you can't really think of a use case for it, or you can't really think of a reason why you would have it.
Also the level of security you've got to have around
Security, absolutely. GDPR, how long you can hold it for, whether you need to do an element of governance on it, because some people just chuck it into a data lake, keep it there for 6 years. You know, there needs to be constant deletion of data that's not needed, and proper governance and security and privacy around it all. So all of these different data source types really play into those different areas.
We understand that this framework definitely applies. How do we now want to solve that problem of going to business users and making data relevant for them, right? How do we move beyond wouldn't it be great if, right? It reminds me very much of, nearly 15, 20 years ago when the mobile app stores came out and the iPhone came out, everybody had an idea for an app, didn't they? Everybody's got an idea for data, that's great, but actually how can we find a way to start doing this with purpose that fits the needs of the business. So we said, right, we need some use cases, but how would we group these? Well, why don't we look at the needs of the customer? That's obvious, right? So the customer at the heart of everything, as people in the Salesforce world, we know, that's what it's all about. That's where Salesforce's success comes from. That's how people get successful with Salesforce. But then we thought, okay, what are the other use cases? What are the other categories that we would have? Marketing's a given, right? Because if with our Salesforce heads on, CDP comes from the marketing world. We were sat with architects from the marketing cloud team that knew about CDP, and then that left the one in the middle of, okay, well, what about the service use cases? When Salesforce were over last week, I was speaking with the product team. They are very, very hungry for service use case examples, right? Because they're a product company. They don't know what it's like in the real world unless they go out and talk to people. They do an awful lot of that. Data Cloud is new. They really, really want to hear about this. So lucky us, we said, right, well, let's get some use cases and let's group them together and talk about what are the needs of the customer. So for customers, we want user-friendly. We want self-service. We want easy access to their bills in this utility context. For the agents, how can we make sure that they've got the best information possible at that moment that the customer calls? Because if you're calling your utility company, you're probably not happy. You don't call them for fun. Do you call your utility company for fun, Paul? Okay, sorry.
No, I was just a question. How do we use DDCX to overcome human factors? So the likes of a service agent there that, let's say, has a target, and let's say I have a subscription to I don't necessarily want to pay what I want to pay. I'm going to be unethical and phone them up. I'm going to tell them I'm cancelling. Oh, we'll give you a discount. I had no intention of cancelling, but this is me being unethical, getting a discount. How does DDCX combat human factors?
Have you worked in a call center in your life?
No.
No, I did, and the best way to get sales is to truly believe, and I'm that naive, is that you're contributing to the person experience and value in a way that you are giving them exactly what you need, and that will also only come from the top up, from what you showed in the slide from the top. If you know that this is I'm giving additional value to my customer, I'm solving their problem, I'm making them happy, I'm contributing to this human experience.
But effectively, I have a problem to begin with. I'm spoofing here.
There are going to be some unethical individuals.
So the how in sort of Salesforce terms that you might recognise, that's going to be presented to the agent through next best action. Now, what drives next best action is those insights, and that's where the business has the opportunity to take everything that they know about patterns of, it's
exactly
it's that Joker calling from North London again. So they've got
There's not going to be one solution for everyone that rings to try and cancel, right? I think if you've been a long-standing customer, you've got, this for argument's sake, a good reputation that you're not a scammer, and you are genuinely ringing because of a problem, you're never going to know the full genuine scale because you take somebody at face value. But you have to do, there's a huge amount of analytics that can happen in the background to understand what is the predicted lifetime value of this individual, what are we potentially losing if we let them go, and therefore how much should we invest in this individual to get them to stay at the minimum viable. If I've only been there for a year and I've rung every 6 months to try and cancel, it may be that the organisation takes the foot, it's like, see you later, They're not that interested in investing in you as an individual. So it would be a case by case, but arming these models with the right data across the enterprise to get the best picture of that individual from field service conversations that have happened when an individual's come to your house. Lots of different socio-demographic variables that would play into however you want to manage it. But it would be analytics, deep understanding of that individual, and not everyone's going to be treated the same way.
For sure.
But you can't always affect what's happening in someone's.
So the service use case is very, very interesting, and like I said, from a Salesforce point of view, this has been very underserved. So anybody who's been able to hook up insights that are coming out of their data lake through an integration, they've gone to some considerable effort to do it. There's not too many people that I've seen that have done that successfully. So as we start to think about Data Cloud and we think about the estate of Salesforce products, Marketing Cloud, Service Cloud that we all know is out there and established, if you think now that you've got a platform available that can create these insights as data points, as fields, you're now in a position to have actionable data inside the Service Cloud, inside the Service Platform, and also inside the Marketing and Sales clouds. And very importantly, you also have the opportunity for these things to correlate and join up, as opposed to a common situation that I've known historically, which is mail shot goes out, customer gets mail shot, customer calls into Service Center, says, I've just received this. Service agent says,
No idea what you're talking about.
Exactly. So that's the potential. And so as we looked, we said, yeah, this looks like our group of three. We started with utilities. We're also doing this now for automotive and for retail as well. It holds water.
Any internal-facing use cases, maybe discarded to focus on a customer and make it more punchy, or efficiencies internally, or?
I mean, anything's possible, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's an example of bottom up actually, which is okay, what could we do, around hygiene, around process improvement, as opposed to okay, we've set the strategy in the direction of the business. Yeah.
So in that case, you will just change the definition of who is the customer, who is the service agent.
Yeah, internal customers versus external customers.
Is it a financial services example versus a utilities example?
But that one as well is going to affect their bottom line much more directly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The next 5 years in terms
But reducing cost to serve in utilities is a huge ambition. Like that's you could argue, an internal metric that they're trying to manage. But how can we stop 1 million people calling up? How can we give them the tools to be able to do that self-serve in a much more cost-effective way? So
10% reduction is huge savings.
exactly. So, but there will be some employee internal focused use cases, but for the purposes of DDCX, which is more customer facing for this particular blog that we did, it was focused on the customer, but you can apply the same framework to internal.
And let me give you just like one from each of these in terms of like the use cases to kind of make it
We're
real,
not expecting you to read these, by the way. It's very, very small.
And there's a link at the end for the blog.
Lots of interesting stuff here.
Okay, so from a customer point of view, utilities forecasting their future usage to predict, their future bills, right? So let's say there's another beast from the east, it's going to be cold, or there's another heat wave. What's that going to do? If we've got the data, we've got the historical usage, we understand how the property you can anticipate, and you can communicate that and affect how the person feels, right? Can you give them a positive feeling out of what is possibly a negative event? They're going to spend more money, but at least they knew what was coming and they could plan. The service agents, the one that I always go to is the vulnerable customer management, because that's actually got teeth, right? That's an obligation that exists on all utility companies to protect people who are on who are vulnerable, whether they're on the register or not.
In UK, by law, everyone.
Yeah, and that includes sharing data. So that is the
I knew you were going to look at
third part. That's third party data,
yes,
right?
They're buying
they're
that
able
registry,
to where they're able to get access to that registry.
Not kicking their doors in to force a pay-as-you-go meter.
That's the nightmare scenario. So
not trying to upsell things that aren't going to be.
Yeah. So and we'll look at that one again in a minute. And then from marketing, would you like to pick one? I've got one I can pick, but
let's go with channel selection and personalization. So if you've got a myriad of channels that you can engage with me through as a customer. From a marketing team, they can either use all of them and be very cost ineffective, spend an absolute fortune, or they can try and be tailored and targeted and actually talk to you via the channels that you are most likely to engage through. So if I am very responsive on WhatsApp to any messages, but I will never open my email, I never engage with anything, all of that engagement data from every single channel versus every single message you've ever been sent can be tracked, and then use that data to target you through the channels, which increases effectiveness and efficiency in terms of budget constraints. So that's one example, and then the customer gets communicated through the channel that they want. And
just to add to that, that's really relevant right now when companies are looking to cut costs. So I've got Gmail, it's 95% full. A lot of that is emails I don't read. Anybody else, you receive all these emails, right? You never read them. But that company is paying for their marketing automation platform to send. So every one email, 1 million emails or 100,000 that they're sending out, it's costing them money. So there's an opportunity there to save money. And if you go back to the framework again, you know, one of the example parties I talked about was, you know, the finance people. There you go. There's something there for them, right? How can we save money, yeah, as well as sustainability.
This is how you sell this change internally to the finance department to sponsor the program.
Because if everybody's not on board, you've still got silos. And sustainability is another one as well. We're going to see that more and more with how many watts are we using overall in our data centers. You know, do we need to have things powered on 24/7? Do we need everything running hot all the time just because we're sending lots of emails that nobody reads?
And a follow-up to that as well is I worked at an agency and said, right, we need to send 5 welcome emails if somebody signs up to this brand. I said, 5, why 5? I said, 5 feels like a good number. And I was like, okay, well, we're being really data-driven here. And I remember thinking at the time, well, how do you know that that person's going to engage with those? So we don't. Well, 5 feels like we've got this message in the first one, this message in the second one, this message. We want to convey all these messages. So it's not just the channel, but it's the quantity of communications going via that channel that's hugely ineffective. And actually the customer starts to detract from the brand because of exactly, unsubscriptions, bombarding.
Google will tell you this, you don't get this, like you're being bombarded right now.
There is a bell curve where you start to disengage. And what brands aren't doing is using the data to find that sweet spot for every single customer. Actually, it's better to talk to me twice. You're saving money, so the bottom line's happy. You're using one channel which I engage through, which is saving money. But I'm also more likely to engage because you're not sending it to me every day, 5 emails every other day. So that cost at the bottom, but also the top starts to get higher because you're becoming more relevant. So the incremental between the two just gets greater and greater.
Less and more meaningful.
Exactly.
So, as the DataTribe, are you excited yet about? you started with CRM analytics, right, 5 years ago, but I mean, it truly is the next wave of data has arrived, right? This is the next big thing for Salesforce. Well, no pun intended.
Let's surf that wave.
No pun intended. But this really is. You can see why Salesforce is so big on this. Let's park the AI thing for in the break, right? But you can see how significant this is. That now we can pull it all together and have enough data in the right place in order to make some of these things real. Let's just do a couple of these. So then take your use cases, put them into journeys so people can relate them to. These are these top 2 are the ones I always gravitate to. So let's say Thomas is a fairly well tech-savvy bloke, like what some of the blokes in this room are like. Okay, he knows what channel he knows what channel he wants to be contacted on. So he set the preference around SMS. He receives an SMS about expected higher usage. So it's that use case of it's going to be very hot or very cold, and he then goes on to engage on the My Account, and then engages, and he's now informed, right? So it's Thomas is not going to be it's going to be a bigger bill next quarter because oh my God, how much is it going to be? He goes and sees, okay, at least he knows.
But it's actually also follow on that he gets pointed to 2 articles on how to help reduce usage in the coming months. So do you stick aluminium foil behind your radiator and those kind of things that I've heard about. I've not practiced them. But it's just inform through the right channel, they engage, and we make recommendations to help that individual through to the next step, rather than just the shock horror of your usages and the bill is twice as high as it should be.
And then Annabelle is our vulnerable customer example. And this one actually, so my mum's 76. She lives by herself, like 150 miles away from me. So this was one that kind of, I guess, kind of went to my heart, right? So they contact her via email. She doesn't respond. What happens? Well, let's say nothing happens. That's not good, right? It's not good for anybody. But because they are working in a data-driven way, they can see that she has not interacted, and then adjust the journey to have a follow-up and go through a channel that she's more likely to respond to, which is to give her a call, right? She'll probably think it's a scammer, like my mum does, but at least that they are then going the extra mile and trying to break through to make sure that in extreme heat or extreme cold, let's say, that she's going to be protected. She knows what help is available. She knows what emergency numbers or whatever that she can call should she have any other concerns. And then the last one is around getting a social notification. So we'll bring in the social channel as well. But this is Clarabelle. She is a bit worried about our boiler. So she lives in a place with an old boiler. Okay, we're going to get a extreme weather event. It's going to be very cold. Actually, you know what? Maybe I should actually pay for that boiler insurance because I think it's probably not going to last the winter. So she goes on. And for the company, well, that's great. They've received an upsell, effectively. But Clara has received, the protection, and she's happy, right? She feels reassured. Nobody made her sell that, made her buy that, right? That was an event, a set of circumstances. She was able then to be informed and choose what she wanted. Yeah, so that's 3 examples then across
and we've
the different use
potentially
cases.
reduced the impact for Clarabelle to ring up customer service when the boiler has. So again, like cost to serve, how do we help the self-serve proactively before an event, before that event becomes a problem? Because then you've got field engineers you have to send out, you've got customer service, which may still happen, but at least it's insured for her.
It's all a bit doom and gloom, isn't it? I mean, back in the mid-90s, we didn't need any of these channels, did we?
Do you remember the hurricane, Todd?
Direct mailer.
It's all better.
Digital revolution.
It's all better. Interest rates were, it's like we've been here before. Yeah. So, okay, so we're nearly there. We're nearly there. You actually now know everything that you need to know, right? And everything we're going to show to you now is just going to make complete sense, right? So, now you know the framework,
right?
And you are experienced Salesforcers. What we need then is to say, well, which bits of Salesforce would we use to make this happen?
All of them.
And that's what Salesforce would like as well, right? So in terms of collecting customer data, we've got rich sources of data inside our existing platforms, whether that's core CRM with sales and service, whether that's marketing cloud, potentially could even be commerce cloud as well, right? So we've got those product sources of data, and we've also got external sources of data. So because we like to be trendy and look fashionable, we put Snowflake on there, but it could be any other kind of less fashionable, less current big data store, right? So it could be a BigQuery, could be a Redshift, could be a whatever. That's one of your key sources. And if you think back to the explanations that Rebecca gave about all of those different sources of data, some of them come from outside your organization. Some of them come from outside of your, outside of the operating business unit. If you want to get a complete picture of the customer, you can't just, stick to the data from your patch. So there's definitely going to need to be a requirement to bring that data in. And that includes social, includes other analytics platforms.
Weather APIs,
like Google Analytics.
all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Then you've got your core, what became Data Cloud, currently labeled here as the CDP part of Data Cloud. Data Cloud continues to change every 2 weeks or so as they build more bits on it with thousands of engineers. But this is your core data ingestion, transformation, validate it, and then match it with identity resolution so that you've stitched things together using the algorithms that just do that magic. I remember it was only 5 or 6 years ago, I was trying to write algorithms of, is this person's mobile phone number the same as this person's mobile phone number? Again, we don't need to do that. Let's just use something that's proven that works. And then once we've done that matching, we're then in the position to activate it. So going then back to service use cases, marketing use cases, social, and commerce as well, because commerce is going to be big in the future of Salesforce because the untapped market of B2C is just there waiting for an architecture just like this. And then in addition to being able to use all this data in your operational systems, you've then got the opportunity to use it within whatever analytics platform that you prefer to use. Salesforce would prefer you to use Tableau. Yeah?
Yeah.
Cool. So how would that relate to Data Cloud? Well, this is a Data Cloud slide pinched off the internet, and it very much follows that same block approach, right? Organized just slightly differently. See, you're nodding, right?
Yes.
You know now. You see, you know everything about Data Cloud. right? By learning DTCX, you know everything about Data Cloud. So you've got your input data sources, connect them in. This, by the way, in my opinion, is huge for Data Cloud around the integration side, but that's a separate presentation. Harmonize it, unifies it. So that was, you know, what used to be labeled as Customer 360. They now label it as the Customer Graph. Then you can do your insights, and then into your actions. So whether that's marketing, whether that's next best action within sales and service. Those are the bits.
And where Data Cloud has evolved from the world of CDP, which some of you may have known, CDP, Genie, Data Cloud, what is it? What CDP was focusing on was certain kind of inbound batch data feeds, but mainly focused on the marketing use cases and segmentation. Data Cloud has evolved to, Matt was talking about the connection, the ability to actually bring in both batch streaming, API, and broader batch data sets from lots of different places. Real time is enabled through Genie, and the scale of the data means they talk about it a bit as a data lake. You can store quite a lot of data in Data Cloud, whereas typical CDPs just kind of move it through. This has got the ability to store it, analyze it, identity resolution. It becomes your source of truth for customer data. And then you can start to move through some of the GPT and AI, Genie, all of this intelligence through the middle. And then your outbound flows are much broader than just marketing now. They are out into Commerce Cloud, Marketing Cloud, Sales Cloud, Service, and then can also go out into analytical reporting, BI instances as well. They've got connectors into SageMaker and Databricks and the works. So it's becoming a much more complex, competitive, I would say, data product in the market at the minute.
I think we've worn them out. Okay, let's skip that one because we've run long. We'll talk to Willis and come back to it. So, where can you find out more? So that's the link to my LinkedIn post that's got the 3 links on it. I tried to make 3 things, but it all got a bit busy. So the 3 links are on here. There's an introduction, a post on the reference architecture, and a post on the use cases, which you'll recognize from the presentation. And there's also the DDCX framework picture. If you like it, print it out, put it on your wall. Be wonderful. And we've got some fun and games that we could do, Will, but I know we've gone very, very long. But I'd just like to thank everybody for all their engagement.
Thanks for bearing with us. Thank you.